Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger. Up next, embarrassed. Let's talk. The Baltimore Ravens lost last night in embarrassing fashion. Blown out at home, big stage, by the Detroit Lions. Well, Boulanger, they only lost by 8. No. On the scoreboard, the last touchdown counts. But for me, that was garbage time. For me, they had no way to win even with that touchdown. So really, they should have lost by double digits. Now, I'll credit them for an 8-point loss. But let's tell the truth. It really wasn't that close. The Baltimore Ravens were leading right after the half. But they screwed up the game before the half. See, with a big-time catch from Devontae Walker, putting them literally inside the 5. And with 4 plays, with Lamar Jackson as the quarterback, Derrick Henry, which is becoming more and more questionable at the running back, Mark Andrews, who had a solid game at tight end, Zay, Bate, D-Hop, Tez Walker, who all could have been options. You have 4 plays inside the 5. And you don't get anything. You don't get anything. That's where the game was lost. You see, because you have to close out those opportunities. You have to capitalize when you're inside the red zone. But heck, when you're inside the 5 and you come away with no points, that's coaching and execution. And throughout this game, the Baltimore Ravens were out-executed on both sides of the ball. True. They didn't have a whole lot of penalties. But the blocking was poor. The running was poor. Sometimes passing was poor. Decision-making in the game was poor. Tackling, missed 20 tackles was poor. Edge rush, non-existent. Pass coverage oftentimes looked non-existent. Embarrassed. And we seem to get these demoralizing, embarrassing type losses when we face off against good teams. Here's the Baltimore Ravens' problem at this point, 3 games in. The Baltimore Ravens are bad in the trenches. With or without Justin Madubuike, they had not played elite against the run. They had played average to above average, but they haven't been a big-time run-stopping team this season. Add that with absolutely no pass rush, and this is what you get. You get ran all over, 225 yards total rushing or a little more from the Detroit Lions, over 200 yards passing, I think it was 411 or something like that. And defensively, we're the worst in the league. Again, we're the absolute worst team in the league on defense. And offensively, we're not that great. What, Boulanger? No. Listen to what I'm telling you. Offensively, we're not that great. See, we feel ourselves sometimes because we scored 40 in the first game. But we could put it on the defense and say, well, the defense was bad. And so that's why we lost. We scored 34 offensive points in the second game. But if you really break down that game, we weren't elite. We just had good field position. And so it made it easier to score. And because the Browns offense couldn't score, like I said, I respect the Browns win, meaning us beating them because you see how good of a team they are defensively. But that defense was on the field so much, not supported by the offense, that they didn't have a choice but to give up points. So then you come into this game and not really be able to sustain offense. We live and die by the escapability of Lamar Jackson. We live and die by the off-schedule play. And what's going to start happening? We're going to start losing more because it literally is offensively Lamar Jackson or bust. We don't have an offensive line that we can lean on, who can lean on defensive opponents and get us 4 and 5 yards per carry. We don't have that. We don't have the type of offensive system. In fact, like I said earlier in another video, we don't have an offensive system. And that's our problem. When you take a look at the Detroit Lions last night, and I literally did this when the game was going on, I looked at Jared Goff on pass plays, and I looked at Lamar Jackson on pass plays, and it's night and day. Yes, they are absolutely different players, different skill sets. Lamar is elite, but Jared Goff is an above average quarterback who has to do things on schedule. Excuse me, but did you hear what I said? He's an above average quarterback that has to do things on schedule. Things have to be good timing. Things have to be crisp, concise, executed. But you know what that's called? A system. But when you look at the Baltimore Ravens pass plays, it seems to always be off script. There's a few times where Lamar Jackson can drop back and let the ball go, and it looks really, really good. And I don't know if we don't have a system because the offensive line is so poor, or if we don't have a system because the scheme is poor. But it looks so much more difficult for the Baltimore Ravens to run offense. All that scrambling and left and right and up and down, it really looks hard for the Baltimore Ravens to move the ball unless you have the big play. And without an ability to have a methodical approach to moving the ball, we're going to have more games that look like this. That's why it looks like the Baltimore Ravens can't sustain drives. Because they can't sustain drives. And honestly, there's nothing we can do about it unless we change the blocking scheme to fit more of what these guys can do. I don't know right now if they're better pass blockers or if they're better run blockers, meaning as a collective. But what I do know is right now, blocking, they're bad. What I do know, defensively, we're bad. And I think you're seeing the results of putting big money in bad places. The Baltimore Ravens put big money into Roquan Smith 3 seasons ago now, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly. And I said at that time it was not going to pay dividends. Is Roquan a good player? Yes. Is he a great linebacker? I don't always know that. I think he's an above average linebacker. Sometimes he plays great. He played great last week, but that was against an impotent offense. But you don't really see him show up a whole lot this year and even last year when we play good offenses who have a scheme, who are on schedule. He cannot cover in the pass. He's not elite as a blitzer. And when he's not able to use his athleticism and go sideline to sideline, he's an average linebacker. And so when you put $20 million of your cap space into a middle linebacker, which you don't see a lot of teams doing, a lot of times what you're seeing teams do is break that $20 million into 2 players, maybe 2 veterans, and then maybe something like a rookie. Like when you look at Jack Campbell, who came in with a little bit of an injury concern, he played well last night. Matter of fact, he played with a busted mouth, if I'm remembering, last night, and he played well. And looked better than what you saw from Roquan Smith. A lot of times we've been talking about who's going to get paid, and we need to keep Travis Jones, and we need to keep this person. But based on what we've saw, the only person that's worth keeping right now, defensively, is Kyle Hamilton and Nate Wiggins. Everybody else for me is questionable. Now, am I saying we're going to get rid of everybody? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about play. Teddy Buchanan has played well for a rookie 4th rounder. But I'm just saying, man, what we see is embarrassing. And this wasn't even supposed to be the defensive video, but I guess we're already there now. But when you think about it, right? Tyler Luke put the ball twice inside the Detroit Lions 5-yard line. And we let them go on 2 95-plus yard drives and not get field goals, but come out of there with 7. Catch what I'm saying. They drive 95 yards get 7 points twice. We were inside the 5 and got 0. Why? Because Detroit has a killer instinct. They have a toughness. They have a mentality that they ain't gonna quit. And the Baltimore Ravens don't. When Detroit started punching Baltimore in the face last night, you know what Baltimore did? I quit. I'm out. Because when you can let a team run, not pass, but run off of their own goal line and pick up 11 yards on one carry and instantly be out of harm's way, that means you were out toughed, out physicaled, translation, punked, embarrassed. It was embarrassing. We haven't seen defense like this in Baltimore ever. And I know a lot of times people said that Zach Orr was a rookie, and meaning last year, and he just needed a chance, and oh man, he really got it together at the end of last season. No. They just changed the safety last season. There's nobody coming until maybe the trade deadline, if it's not too late at that point, to save us. Nobody's coming to save us. It's absolutely insane to see the exact same scenario play out 2 years in a row. Worst defense in the league. You can't stop the pass. You can't get after the passer. And please don't give me the stat that we led the league in sacks last season. I told you, 22 of them sacks are happenstance sacks. Meaning, it's not that Kyle Van Noy with 12 sacks and Odafe Oweh with 10 sacks, they were just blowing by, collapsing the pocket, and killing the quarterback. That's not how those 22 sacks happened. It's not. Those quarterbacks was moving around in the pocket and moved into a sack. And you're seeing it evident this year. Odafe Oweh is solid against the run, but he's not a pass rusher. He's not. Tavius Robinson's good against the run. Well, nobody was good against the run last night, but typically he's good against the run. He's not a pass rusher. And Mike Green is used as just an ordinary guy instead of a pass rush specialist. In fact, the Baltimore Ravens pass rush is so bad, and our ability to stop the run right now is not that great, because it started last week with Judkins, getting busy a little bit against us last week. I said 2 years ago, we should probably move to a 4-3. Why did I say that? Because it's easier to find a 4-3 defensive end who can rush the passer versus a 3-4 edge rusher, outside linebacker type who can rush the passer. Somebody who can put their hand in the dirt, get off the ball, and go get the quarterback. I've said for about 2 years now that the Baltimore Ravens, because of a lack of a pass rush, should consider playing more of a traditional 4-3. Because this 3-4 stuff under Zach Orr is some trash. And Zach Orr is a link in this situation, and John Harbaugh is a link in this situation. I know players have to go play and execute, but John Harbaugh is responsible for selecting Zach Orr as the DC. And Zach Orr for 2 seasons straight has led this defense right into spot number 32 in all of the NFL. We allow the most points in the league, and that's even after Chicago gave up 52 last week to this same Detroit Lions team. And we allow the most yards. Translation, bad. Bad. Again, I know Madubuike was missing last night. But Kyle Hamilton said out of his own mouth in the post-game press conference, if one player makes that big of a difference, then shame on us. Well, Kyle Hamilton, shame on y'all. This is embarrassing for Baltimore Ravens defense. And here's the truth, man. Nobody's scared of us defensively anymore. They knew at a time that when you came to play the Baltimore Ravens, you were going to get hit in the mouth. The best hit last night came from Chidobe Awuzie, a corner. And that's not saying a whole lot. because we didn't do a whole lot of hitting last night. We got our behinds kicked, and it's embarrassing. And so it always leaves us as a fan base and maybe even the team hoping, can Lamar pull out something? Can Lamar make something happen? And the answer is that era in Baltimore is over. Here's what I mean. If we're still in Lamar Jackson or nothing mode, we don't have a chance to win anything. Because when you look at that one player type of offense, typically it's the quarterback, and when he has to make all the plays, elude all the rushes, escape the pocket 20 times a game, and do a whole lot of scampering and go back and go forward and all that, it makes good for TV. It makes good television, but it doesn't do well for winning. Because all teams have to do now is let me put that spot on him. Because we don't believe that the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers can beat us consistently. We don't believe that their offensive line is that good consistently. And if we just rush with 4, the 5th guy can just play cleanup. That's what you're going to watch teams do. And when you look at the next game for us, Chris Jones, an elite pass rusher. Karlaftis has gotten better because of Chris Jones. So now they have a duo in their trenches that has caused us trouble for the last 4 or 5 seasons. I think after that game, we play the Rams. They have a young duo that they drafted last year who are terrorizing quarterbacks. And this is not a preview for Kansas City. I won't even start talking about Kansas City probably until Wednesday or Thursday, only because I got so much to say about this game and this team. But the Baltimore Ravens were straight up embarrassed, both offensively and defensively. And here's a clue. In the season that Lamar Jackson was getting sacked, that would be 2021 and 2022, if I'm remembering those seasons correctly, he left those seasons with injuries. Remember, 2021, when he left with injury, one of those games he took 7 sacks against the Pittsburgh Steelers. He cannot take on those kind of hits. Again, some of that is on him, and some of that is not. It's going to take a collective effort from Harbaugh to Monken to Zach Orr to Lamar Jackson to Kyle Hamilton. I'm talking about the leaders of this team to figure this thing out. And I really wonder, are they really feeling the loss offensively of Isaiah Likely? I'm not sure, because we put up good points. But I know he makes life easier. So, whenever we get him back, that's like getting, a big time, if you made a big time trade mid-season and got a dominant type player, getting him back will be the equivalent of that. But where will we be record-wise? So listen, man. Unfortunately, man, we got a short week to figure some things out. Otherwise, this embarrassment is going to continue. I'm your guy, Belanger, and I'm out.